Hey guys, CrossFlux here with some new Yu-Gi-Oh content. I haven't made a deck profile before, but I figured I'd give it a try. As you know, I've recently announced my participation in the Sparkman Yugitube Tournament. If you don't know what that's about, you can click the link in the description and find out all about it. Anyways, since the tournament will be going on for several weeks, and we get to use a new deck in between rounds, I thought I'd try a variety of decks and do some various profiles on them. So if you enjoy this kind of content, be sure to like and comment, and stay tuned over the next few weeks. Enough of the behind the scenes stuff, let's actually begin covering the deck that I'm bringing to the first round of the tournament, against RPK Gaming. This is Broken Idea's favorite archetype, and also one of my personal favorites too, Madolche. They may not be the strongest archetype out there, but they are very consistent, something I value highly in a tournament setting. The last thing I want to do is brick on all of my opening hands. So what makes Madolche worth playing? Well, besides their aesthetic, they have a lot going for them. They have several one-card combos, and their overall archetype package is pretty compact, meaning you have plenty of space in the main deck for additional hand traps and situational cards. The boss monster is surprisingly lethal, possessing removal that's hard to avoid. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. For the profile proper, let's start with the monsters. This deck has 9 starters that are each one-card combos. Not only that, but some of these cards can also double as extenders depending on the situation. Together, this makes their combos incredibly consistent, and there aren't many choke points either. Up first, we have Triple Magulin. It's a shame her effect only triggers on normal or flip summon, but she'd be broken otherwise. Normal summon isn't too big of a deal though, since our deck doesn't really have any other cards that we'd need to drop from her hands anyways. So, her stats are negligible, but her on-summon effect allows us to add a Madolche from deck to hand. Generic searching is really great, but there's only a handful of cards you'd feasibly grab with this effect anyways. The most likely candidate is the next card on our list. We're running Triple Petingcesseour. This card was a really big boost to the strategy, and serves as a great starter or extender. As long as you have no monsters in grave, not a problem with the Madolche strategy, you can special her from your hand for free. In addition, when she's special summoned by any means, you can bring out any Madolche from deck and reduce its level by 1. The obvious choice here is her big sis, Puddingcess, but you can grab anything you need really. The only problems with her are that both effects are hard once per turns, and you're locked into summoning only Madolche for the turn. Basically, you can't drop the rock, or go into Zeus the turn you use Petingcesseour, but otherwise the downside is negligible. Up next, we also have 3 servings of Angeli. Like with all the main deck Madolche monsters, her stats are negligible. We play her for her effect, which is another hard once per turn. It reads, you contribute her to special summon another Madolche from deck, and that card is immune to battle destruction until the end of your opponent's turn. Angeli is basically a wild card for the deck, since she can tag herself into any other card. Using her effectively can be a little tricky depending on the other cards in your hand. Since Madolches prefer to have no monsters in grave, the fact that Angeli tributes herself means that that's where she's getting sent. Of course, we do have cards that require cards in the grave, so just be wary of what you have. The last of our starters and extenders is Double Hootcake. You could feasibly bump this number up to 3, but since Hootcake requires having cards in the grave, he's a bit tricky to use, lending himself to be a bit bricky, especially in an opening hand. Thus, I run only 2 copies. His effect allows you to banish a monster from your grave in order to special out another Madolche from the deck. The best choice is usually the next card on our list, Messengelato. Speaking of, he is another 2 of. 1800 attack on a 4-star is actually relevant, a first for the main deck Madolche monsters. But of course the main reason for running him is still for his effect. Being an older Madolche card, his effect isn't limited to once per turn, so it's easy to abuse. When he's special summoned while you have a beast type Madolche, you can add a Madolche spell or trap from deck to hand. So the only problem with this guy is the stipulation of having to have Hootcake on the field in order to get the search. Also, why is Hootcake a beast and not a winged beast? Is there something he's not telling us? Anyways, there are several options to search for with Messengelato's effect. I run each of these cards as 2 ofs, since they are easily searchable, and you don't really want to clog on them. First up is Ticket. It lets you search or summon a Madolche from deck whenever you recur a resource. Salon will grant you an additional normal summon, which is great for abusing Magulin. Not only that, but it also lets you set another Madolche spell or trap straight from your deck whenever you recur a resource. Chateau is the field spell. It buffs your Madolches by 500 attack, which is a big enough boost to actually be relevant. The main effect triggers upon activation. It immediately shuffles all your Madolche cards from your grave back into your deck. This is nice because it lets you recycle even your other spells and traps. The third effect of the card is highly situational, and honestly, I hardly use it. The last Messengelato target is Promenade. This is an Omni-Negate that requires you to return a Madolche from field or grave to hand. Like most modern spells and traps, it also has a Banish from Grave ability, allowing you to attach a Madolche from anywhere to an Xyz monster you control. I pretty much only use this effect though if I have a Puddingcess stuck in my hand or something. Speaking of Puddingcess, she is an important ingredient in this deck, but man is she a brick. I run only the 1 copy because I can grab her in many different ways, but I definitely don't want to draw her. She can be used on her own in a sticky situation, but her primary purpose is to serve as Xyz material. We'll get more into that later once we cover the extra deck monsters. But that's it for the Madolche package. Like I said, pretty compact. This leaves tons of room for additional hand traps and other situational cards. Each of my hand traps are only at 1 copy each, so that I have as many versatile targets for Crossout Designator as possible. So, side bit, I actually hate Designator from a design perspective. Like, it's just so specific in what it's designed to do, but I can't deny that it's really good in Madolche, since they have the space to run it. Triple Designator helps our combos go through, and besides Designator, we also run the 1 copy of Called By to ensure that those pesky hand traps don't screw us over. For a dash of spice, we also have Triple Small World. This card is so wordy and complex, it honestly reminds me a bit of Inspector Border. Basically, it lets you trade a card in hand for another card in deck. You just have to go through a few hoops to get there. Madolche is a great archetype for this spell though, since the only thing they share in common with one another is their Earth attribute. Another card for helping out with consistency is Pot of Prosperity, which we run at 3. You could run Extravagance instead of Prosperity, but Madolche don't really need that many generic resources in hand, so much as they need that 1 combo piece they're looking for. Also, you don't want to run the risk of banishing out all your copies of your Xyz monsters, as they are your win conditions. But that's it for the main deck, so let's jump into our win conditions, shall we? Sistart is a link monster that is somewhat useful, but not overly so. I mainly use her as a way to force Madolches into my graveyard if I need them there as fuel for other cards such as Hootcake and the next card on our list. Queen Tiaramisu is our deck mommy, to quote Reb's cards. You make her and then push for game. Requiring any 2 level 4 monsters to make, she's easy to summon. Activating her effect lets you shuffle up to 2 cards on your opponent's field into their deck. This effect does not target. This is insane, as the only way to protect your cards against this effect is to either negate it straight from the get-go, or to have a card that is straight up unaffected by other card effects. Once you've cleared your opponent's field of their biggest threats, you can then rank your queen up into the princess. Chocolat-a-la-Mode has a better attack point value, and she allows you to both recur resources while also swarming the field, assuming you have Puddingcess as material, which you should. The last Madolche extra deck monster is Glassoufle. She's essential to the strategy as she helps keep your other monsters protected, and she can both recur resources from your grave or mess with your opponent by shuffling back cards from their grave. These are the only essential Xyz monsters, so the rest of your extra deck is up to personal preference. Zeus is an obvious shoo-in though, since this is an Xyz-based strategy, and Thundercharger can rank up from Chocolate, which can go into said Zeus, which gives him tons of material straight from the get-go. For my last 2 slots, I'm opting for extra deck fodder to send off of, say, Dogmatica Maximus, in case that someone is ever on that strategy. Besides, I'm not really going to use these last slots anyways, but I suppose I could include something like Access Code Talker to push for games, but that requires a bit of legwork since I can't use Petingcesseour if I'm planning on going into the Talker, so it gets a little finicky from there. Quick shout out to the side deck though. I hardly ever duel with side decks in real life, so I'm far from the best at figuring out what should go in here, let alone what to take out for the main deck. Regardless, I've just put together some cards that would help against certain strategies that the main deck might struggle with. Spell and Trap Hate in the form of Cyclone and Twisters, Goes and Match as a Floodgate, Dark Ruler and Droplet for board breaking potential, and generic going second cards like Gamma Seal and Pank. Overall, this is what I'm rocking. It's one of my favorite decks to play mechanically. It's very consistent and easily underestimated, so hopefully it serves me well against RPK. Please be sure to leave comments down below on suggestions for improving this deck. Wish me luck, and I'll see you guys next week with the round 2 deck profile. Until then, time to give RPK a serving of his medicine. Have a blessed day.